What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Fightin', whereas Anthony Sanfilippo is here. I'm Bob Wankel, and this episode is brought to you by Presidente Beer, our new official sponsor on the podcast. It's not actually, but if you'd like to sponsor us, let us know. We are doing this show because the Phillies finally released Nick Castellanos in a conclusion that felt inevitable, and there are a lot of different layers to this story. It's sort of complicated, and it's definitely interesting. And at a time when spring training's starting and you're looking for things to talk about because the interest is coming back, boy, did this story come at a good time, because I don't really have much on guys playing catch right now. So Anthony, bring you in here and, give me the journalist perspective of how this is to be viewed. And I want to talk a little bit about the Gelb story, which was certainly awesome. I thought it was really well done. Want to get into that too. And so there's a lot of different things that we can kind of tackle here.
Yeah. I mean, this is one hell of a way to celebrate a birthday, Bob. So,
is it today your birthday?
Yeah.
Oh, we're not seeing, like, I haven't been on Facebook, and I rely on Facebook to tell me this. I saw it was your son's birthday like a week or two ago.
Yeah, Anthony. Yeah. It was Anthony. Anthony turned 30 on Sunday, on Super Bowl Sunday, and today is my birthday. So
well, I'm glad that you're carving out 30 minutes of your birthday to spend with me.
Yeah, this is exactly what
$20 million guy that's going to be playing for the Twins next year.
Nothing better than spending part of my birthday talking about Nick Castellanos.
Yes.
So I mean, the way I look at it is, so I'm fascinated by several facets of this thing. First, bringing a beer into the dugout. I mean, that's fascinating. Obviously, we've yet to hear exactly what words were exchanged, and I'm not sure we ever will. I mean, Matt spent a lot of time digging into this story. It took 7 months to write. So I don't know if we'll ever get any further than what we just got. That was fascinating. The fact that he did a handwritten manifesto to try and get out ahead of the story on the day that he was released. That was kind of unexpected. Like, as you try to figure out all the paths that this could have gone down, right, in explaining the departure of Nick Castellanos from the Philadelphia Phillies, I'm not sure anybody would have had that on their bingo card, a handwritten manifesto. Like really, I mean, seriously, like that was not something that I expected, or I think anyone would have expected. So I found that fascinating. And I think that there's some real, criticism to be levied at the Phillies here for how they handled this. And I look at it and say there are real baseball reasons to move on from Nick Castellanos. And we've discussed them ad nauseum. His 2025 season, like, the one thing I've said to people, if you look at Castellanos' first 3 years here, there were frustrations. Sure, he ran hot and cold, but there were a lot of really good moments. When he was hot, he was good for this team. 2025, he never really had that. It just was not there, and like it had fallen off of a cliff. And then you throw in all the drama, and you sit there and go, okay, there's real baseball reasons that we could sit there and say we can go in a different direction than this guy in right field. And so I think that's fair, but to let it linger in this way this long and have it come all out while you're at the start of spring training, I think that's poorly played by the team in a lot of ways.
I do too. Okay, so let's first just establish what we got here. Nick Castellanos gets removed for defensive purposes in Miami. He's not happy. That was already reported. We knew that. He gets benched the next day because he does something that was inexcusable, or it just rose to a level that was just not going to be tolerated. They bench him for a game. Then he plays the next 30 or 31 games consecutively. The defensive replacement stuff goes out the window. Okay. I think where I'm at on this, like, let's start here. Crazy story to hear that he brings a beer into the dugout and that's the way that he's going to go about it. I don't think that is obviously acceptable. He should not have done that. He admits that he should not have done that. You're not going to get anybody that disagrees about that point. What I don't understand in what's been reported and if you're listening to this podcast, you already have the basic facts here, so we don't need to go through the basic facts. But I look at this more about the Phillies than I do Nick Castellanos. Nick Castellanos was not good last year. I don't care that he's not here anymore. This isn't a situation like AJ Brown and the Eagles, where if the Eagles move on from AJ Brown, it's not like it would be like, how could you not make this work? He's a great player. You couldn't find a way. I don't care that they were unable to find a way to make it work with Nick Castellanos, because he was an objectively bad baseball player last year. He was. So you want to move off Nick Castellanos, that's fine. But there are so many questions that I have about the way that this went down. And the first of which is you suspended him for a game because you wanted to strategically implement something on the field that was going to help you win. And then you turn around and you play him for the next month straight without a day off. Like, if that's where you want to go, then why not go there? Why do it one time, have this blow up, and then say, you know what? Never mind. We're not going to do this anymore until we do it again. To me, like, the messaging from management, that's so inconsistent that if I were a player, I'd be like, well, what the hell are we doing? Are we trying to win baseball games or are we not? Like, you either commit to it in that moment and you stay on it, or you don't. If I were a player in that clubhouse, I'd say, like, my guess is it's about time is probably the way I'm looking at it. But then you kind of go back on it immediately. Like, to me, the inconsistency there is very concerning.
Yeah, and I want to bring this up because I'm not normally in agreement with our good friend Russ Joy here at Joy Media, and I love that he always, by the way, tweets from or messages us from his other podcast show. So it's a little bit of a self-promoter. Yeah. But here's my issue: Dombrowski should have suspended him for the season or cut him on the spot.
Well, I don't think that the collective bargaining agreement would allow a season-long suspension.
Yeah, right, correct. Like, could you have suspended him? They benched him for a game. Could you have suspended him for 2 to 3 games? Like, I think that would have been fair, right? In retrospect, I think that you could have done that. You could have cut him. You could have released him on the spot.
Sure,
but you also got to wonder how that plays in the clubhouse. I'm not 100% sure that was the breaking point for the clubhouse. The players obviously were not in agreement with what he did. They were kind of like, oh man, this is not good. But I think there were things that happened after the fact that really got to the point where the players started to separate from him. He was still one of the guys at that point, at that juncture in June in Florida. And if you release him on the spot, I think that would have had different ramifications in that clubhouse than maybe if you did it later in the year. Right? Yeah. Like, that's another thing. Like, as you look at things progressed, once he was not responding well to being a platoon player, and he started to cause some issues with, saying Harrison Bader was unhappy when he really wasn't, and he puts the Harper thing out with Rob Manfred, right? Which that didn't go.
Well, I think that it gets complicated because he's a human being, and these guys are all human beings, and it's not a black and white thing where you say, like, oh, he did something really wrong, and also he was a terrible person, and everyone hated him, and nor did everyone love him, and nor did everyone agree with what he was doing. So you do have to navigate it, and it is difficult to kind of pin down like the timeline where it went past the point of acceptability. But I think you kind of come to learn when you read that Geld piece. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it, especially before you fire off your takes about how the Phillies did Nick Castellanos wrong. I mean, look, it's quite clear that there was a certain level of respect for Nick. And I think that there were certain guys that certainly had his back in that clubhouse. But I think it was also quite clear simultaneously that he wore out his welcome and that it probably was not going to work moving forward. I guess my question is this: beyond the Rob Thompson stuff, Phillies basically said at the end of last year, like, we're not bringing this guy back. Now, I would argue that he probably did not have much trade value.
Just to be clear, they tried to trade him last year, prior to 2025, and got no takers. Right. So his trade value was already pretty big.
At that time, there was probably more of a consideration about the finances. I would imagine back then that they were not, testing teams with 2 years and $40 million left saying, hey, we'll eat 35 of it.
Yeah.
You fast forward to now, and they were, I assume that they were probably trying to find a team that would pick up $3, $4, $5 million. I mean, this was not a big ask from a financial standpoint. But to me, the question is, why kill any hope or leverage that you would have in a negotiation if you were going to hold on to him throughout the winter in the hopes that you could find a trade partner? Like, if you didn't think you were going to find a trade partner, you should have cut him 3 months ago. But you obviously thought that there was going to be some potential landing spot, some hope that you could make a move. So while I appreciate the transparency and the honesty from Dave Dombrowski, part of me simultaneously scratches my head and said, like, you had very little leverage going into this, and man, you made sure that you had zero of it by the time you started making phone calls.
Yeah, well, I think that there's more to it than that, right? If I had to look at it and find a nuanced angle on it, I would sit there and say everybody around the sport knows what happened.
Kind of knows what's up, right? Like,
right. They know.
I agree with that.
People are talking. It's a very cliquey sports in general, and in all sports. And I don't think fans quite understand that as much. There's a lot of internal conversation between players on different teams, between agents and between, who used to work with this guy and is friends with this guy. Everybody knows everything. So there's no real internal secrets on what's going on with guys. And so even if they weren't as transparent about it, even if it wasn't public, the people within the sport would have known. And so I guess I could in part understand why you don't release them right away. You try and sit there and say, let's hold on. Maybe there's a team out there that is looking for, because there's no right-handed bats in the outfield, right? We know this. We discussed this previously. Maybe there's a team who's really desperate for a right-handed bat who, after they miss out on the 3 or 4 guys that are out there, they'll say, okay, yeah, we'll settle for Nick Castellanos at $3 million, and you save $3 million. Or maybe somebody gets hurt in the offseason, whatever, and we're desperate to add a player. Like, I can understand why the Phillies waited. What I don't understand is why they waited as long as they did.
To a degree, I can understand it. Like, to just write off $2 or $3 million, you can't do that. So if you think that there is a hope that you could, recoup some of that money, then okay. But to me, and I'm not saying that they're going to win 4 games less this season because they waited until spring training to do this, or that it's going to prevent them from, it's going to be the thing that prevents them from ultimately achieving their goals. But to me, isn't there an in-between where you don't allow this to be the story that opens your camp, where you have this cloud hanging over you?
Correct.
And this distraction hanging over you? And I know it's February 13th and you have 6 weeks, 7 weeks to overcome the distraction. I get it, but what a weird way to set the stage for your season.
I'm in agreement with you. And that's where
by January 10th, if I'm not getting anything, Christmas goes by, all the meetings have gone by, I'm starting to understand where the shape of the market is. I go, this probably isn't happening. Is it really worth the $2 million to me now to drag this on for another month and have this story come out the way it does?
Right. And that's the thing. I get the sense, Bob, that even if you would have waited up until last week, right before, the week before spring training opens, and then you released him last week, it get the story, it gets out there, whatever. But then when you go in, you show up at spring training, pitchers and catchers, it's not dominating the conversation. We were talking about the players that are down there and getting ready for the season and all that. Instead, you have a 48-hour, 72-hour cycle here while you're in camp where it is a distraction. And that's where I think that the Phillies misplayed this. I think that they could have done this sooner, and it would have been a much easier thing for them.
One of the things that I find very interesting, and I feel like it's been somewhat overlooked in the conversations about this situation, is go back to what Nick Castellanos says allegedly or reportedly on the bench, which is, and I'm paraphrasing here, but there's an inconsistency in the way things get handled with certain players in that clubhouse. Like, you can't bear down and be ultra strict in one way and then not be consistent in another way. Look, I'm glad that they moved on from Nick Castellanos. Quite honestly, I don't think that he here would have helped this team win baseball games. And so for that reason, I'm good with it. But I don't think that we can just say, oh, well, he was malcontent, or like he was miserable and he didn't want to be here, so he was just starting shit. I think you have to look at it and say, like, there might be something to that. And I think it's really concerning when you pair it with the fact that we've been asking ourselves at different points over the last 2 years, does this team get too complacent? Does this team seem to go into these lulls where they fall asleep? You know, is this team being pushed and held accountable to the degree that it should be? And look, they won 96 games last year. And I think that they certainly, had they not played the Dodgers, had a chance to make a run in the postseason. But when you go back to 24 especially, and you just look at the thing in totality, I do wonder, like, is this a real issue? Are there some differences in how things are being messaged from the front office or from the coaching staff down through some of the players in that clubhouse?
I mean, I do think that there are different rules for different players, but I don't think that is unique to the Phillies.
It's not unique to the Phillies, nor is it unique to baseball or unique to 2025. I mean, so long as there's been sports teams and different personalities and different abilities within those teams and different contracts, by the way, like that's always been a thing.
Right. And I find
when you have a guy that's making $20 million a year calling that out.
Well, so this is where I take issue with Nick, because I feel like the one thing that the Phillies did with him is they gave him a far longer leash than maybe they should have. Like, they gave, year before when he was hitting 130 in April, they kept trotting him out there, right? They let him play 162 games in a season because it was something that he wanted to do, even if he wasn't at his best. They let him have his son hang around the clubhouse all the time, out in the field, taking fly balls, taking batting practice. And I thought that was
what did you make of that line in the Gelb story about Real Muto waiting to take batting practice because, pardon me, his son was out on the field taking batting practice? Like, there was no line included in how that was an agitator for the players, but it felt like that would not have been in there if that were not the case.
Correct. I think that's one. I think it was used as an example of how Nick, even though he was a well-liked player in the clubhouse, how he started to have his priorities out of line with what the team was trying to get done. And I think that was what that was trying to reflect. In other words, like, okay, we don't mind that your kid's around, but we're about to take BP for a big series. And, our catcher wants to get out there and hit, and he can't because he has to wait for your son to get done.
Right.
And I think there was also a time when, I mean, there were multiple kids in that locker room. This is not a Liam thing. There were multiple kids in that locker room at one point in the second half of the season. They were banging stuff around in the clubhouse. I think there was a ball that hit a television, and, there was something that was Kyle Schwarber's got knocked over, whatever. I mean, Schwarber was not upset, but there were a couple of guys who were like, what's going on here? Like, what is happening in here? Like, it's a workplace. This is a work environment, and we're, letting it become a little bit of a romper room. So, like, Castellanos got those. He didn't have to hit, to take batting practice with Kevin Long. He didn't like Kevin Long.
Well, I wanted to talk about that too, because one of the things that we've talked about on this show, while the hitting coach has been discussed and sometimes criticized, I guess, and he's so well respected. He is the most well respected hitting coach in Major League Baseball. If not him, then who? And to come to find out that one of the team's most prominent, well-paid players is like, I'm not listening to this. I don't trust this guy. He didn't do it. Rob didn't do it at the big league level. Is really interesting to me. And by the way, I don't actually know, maybe you do. I don't know Kevin Long's resume, but Rob Thompson was a Division I baseball player. It's not like he's just some guy that showed up. He wasn't out of the out of the front office with a calculator in his hand. You know what I mean? Like, this is a guy that like knows the game, has been around the game for decades.
Right. Well, and that's the thing too. And that's where Nick has to, I get it. I understand. And look, I find it in hockey all the time too. Players respect the opinions of coaches who have played in the league as opposed to those who have not. We used to see it back in the old days with Ken Hitchcock. There was a lack of respect, even though he was a great coach. And even last year with Tortorella, there was a slight lack of respect because the guy didn't play in the league. And so that kind of attitude persists in sports, but should it? You know what I mean? Like, just because you couldn't physically do what was these guys are doing at the highest level,
as high profile as it gets.
Yeah.
Say, hey, I can vouch for him. He's really good. If you go to Trey Turner, if you go to Kyle Schwarber, if you go to Bryce Harper, you go Juan Soto, like, hey, this guy is as good as it gets. And like, then you have this guy over here saying,
yeah, exactly. And so so this is my point. So they let him do his own early work. He had his separate batting practice on his own, and he's not alone. I mean, Harper and Real Muto usually are in the cage underneath, and Schwarber, they don't go out on the field and do it. And Castellanos would go out on the field, but he'd go out by himself as opposed or with one or two other guys and never really in the regular BP. They gave him that. That's what I'm saying. Like, he was the recipient of a lot of those rules, the leeway to some of those rules, the loopholes to those rules. So to sit there and complain the first time he gets pulled and say that rules are different for other guys than it is for him, like, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to sort of compute when you consider how poor he was for stretches. And like, look, do I think he was a disaster here? No. Did he earn his contract here? No. But I mean, he had his moments, and I thought he was an okay guy, and all of those things. But I just, you do feel like there's like a little bit of a disconnect from reality. You're like, well, dude, like, if you want to be treated like a superstar, play like a superstar. And I appreciate your resume, but here you're hitting 140 over 32 games, and you're striking out 39% of your at bats. And like,
Matt Gell pointed it out in the story. His OPS plus in his 4 years in Philadelphia was exactly 100, which is league average. He was a league average player in Philadelphia. That's what he was. At 3 years, he was probably slightly above league average. Last year, he was certainly below league average and it pulled it down. And that's what he was as a player. It didn't live up to the contract. Sorry, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. I know there was another interesting item from Gelb's article that you wanted to talk about, and that was the contract that was offered when he coming to Philadelphia.
That felt like it was piling on, not by Matt, but I felt like someone very much wanted you to know also, now that the contract is done or has one more year on it, but the guy won't be here, that he never wanted to be here in the first place. That he did not want to come to Philadelphia, and that when he got the $20 million a year over 5 years, he asked his agent to please find me another team that can match this. I mean, I'm not terribly surprised to hear that. I think that Nick was always a little bit uncomfortable in Philadelphia. And I think part of that is not necessarily because Philadelphia or the Phillies did anything wrong. I think that they were more than accommodating in many ways, some of which you just talked about.
Yeah.
But I think in his mind, he was sort of predisposed to feel like this is not a natural fit for me. I'm going to have an issue here a little bit.
Yeah.
And certainly if
let's remember when they signed him, what was his role, Bob? It was not what he ended up being. They brought him in here to be a platoon left fielder / DH. Yeah. So like him and Schwarber were going to split left field and DH. That's what it was going to be. What I mean by platoon, I don't mean on the bench half the time. I mean half the time you're the DH, half the time you're in the field. And then the Bryce Harper injury changed everything for this organization. That elbow injury changed everything. And Nick Castellanos had to become a right fielder. And it was it was an uncomfortable process. That's why he shouted out Paco Figueroa as much as he did.
Yeah.
Because that was that's why it's hard to really kind of navigate this story for a lot of people, because we all wrote about it. He was a hard worker, right? There was never a question that Nick Castellanos was never dogging it.
Yeah.
He would come in early. He would work his tail off to try and get better in right field, even though he was never good, right? But he worked at it and became at least passable, right? Like he wasn't a total disaster. Until last year was probably his worst year. He was well liked by his teammate. Let's remember, what was the last thing he did as a Philly? He ran in right field, put his arm around Ryan Kerkering and kind of helped him off the field and let him know that everything was going to be okay. Like, so there are things about Nick Castellanos that were very visible to people and say, well, how can you say that this guy didn't try? Yes, he tried. There's no doubt about it. He was a professional in that vein. He let last year get to him in a way that became unprofessional. Not in his performance, not in the way that he worked with his teammates, but in how he was viewed as a player in an organization where he put Nick Castellanos ahead of the team. And that was a problem.
You buying a bounce back for him next year? Gets or this year, fresh start, place he might want to be, feels more comfortable, turn the page?
I mean, it depends on where he ends up, right? I mean, is he going to go to a team that's got a chance to win? I don't think so. Right. I think he probably has to go somewhere that, on a team that's not a good team and try and have a good season. And maybe he gets traded at the deadline to a contender if he's having a good year. I mean, I could see that possibly, but
not to mention it's a contract year too. I mean, he's going to want to get opportunities because he's probably looking to, I would imagine he's looking to play another year or two.
Right.
We'll see.
Right.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. I mean, I guess the other point of that is that if you look at an article, which was, I thought, very well done by Matt, you always wonder to yourself, okay, this information is pretty interesting. How did it get here? How did the writer get this information? Would the Phillies be interested in letting everyone know that he didn't really want to be a Philly on the way out the door? Like, maybe. But his agent that did that deal is no longer his agent. And I wonder if he was happy to say, I'll do the Phillies a solid here and let everyone know where his intentions were.
Especially since the Phillies have a pretty good relationship
with that agent being Scott Boras.
Scott Boras is who we're talking about. Yeah.
So it's interesting stuff. I don't think, as I zoom back out now and look at it as it pertains to this team, I think they're probably marginally better in right field, and if they're not, it's probably a wash. I don't think that the fallout from this really has any impact on the perception of the team or what they can accomplish or will accomplish. And I think really this is just a story of pure drama. Like that, it's fascinating when you want to talk about how clubhouse dynamics work and how player, front office, manager dynamics work. And it's a pretty juicy, pretty interesting story, especially. And I think it helps with baseball because you feel like these guys on a little bit more of an individual from an individual standpoint, from home. Like when you watch the Phillies, you feel like these people more than you do in the NFL, in the NBA, and maybe even the NHL, because there's more games, there's more face time. Some of the personalities and quirks are more visible through the television. But I don't think it matters. We did 30 minutes on it, and I just tell you, I just don't think it has anything to do with the 26 Phillies.
I agree with you. I don't think so either. I just think it's a distraction right now. Although I do have one final 2-part question for you, Bob.
There's one part that of this. I have one more criticism for the Phillies too.
Okay.
GM.
All right. Well, we'll get to that. Well, you know what? Let's do that first, and I'll save because I think mine's a little bit more lighthearted.
Yeah, Dave was asked about the letter and what did you think? And by the way, I actually appreciate that he sat down, and I'm not surprised that Nick Castellanos would do this. But I like the fact that it was handwritten. It wasn't done on a notepad and screenshotted. It wasn't AI generated. Like I think that that's a nice touch. I actually thought that the note itself was more than fine. But they asked Dave about it, and he's like, "Well, I don't want to be the one that speaks to it." Like, kind of played dumb at first, and then was like, it happened 7 months ago, and you're the president of the team. Like, say it. Like, you talk. It's up to you to deliver the message. It's up to you with a microphone in your face to respond to it. Like, just like dodging and ducking and like, it's not really a big deal. It's not for me to talk about. Like, just answer the question.
I mean, the question that, and it's funny because I think there was a little slip up when he called it first. It called it a suspension, and then he said, "Well, no, it wasn't a suspension. It was he was just benched for a game." I would like to know why they chose not to suspend him. Like, that to me would have been a question. Like, well, okay, just in retrospect then, and since we're finding out about it now, and obviously you probably discussed it, why did you determine that it was not suspension worthy?
Right.
Like, that would, and that was would have been a question I would have liked to have asked if I were down there. But no, I agree with you. Like, he was too wishy-washy about it. He was too dismissive of it. And
it's not a huge deal, like not a huge deal, but it's just like, then you go back to the way that this thing played out. I go back to the Strom thing in the fall. He didn't do it, but we did it with the PFPs, and then you end up trading them, which I'm fine with. But like, we talked about the Strom trade. There's a little bit of a decline that may continue. Fine, but like, did you get fair value back from Matt Strom in your trade? I don't know. Maybe you did. I wasn't on the phone line taking the temperature of trade partners, but like, that trade felt a little light to me. Like, talk about some of the inaction, not really turning the roster over the way people wanted to. There wasn't a ton of creativity. Like, it just starts to add up. I told you, 4 years ago, that they needed desperately an adult in that front office to revamp the way that they think and conduct business. And they were in a dark place for a really long time. And I think that Dave Dombrowski, despite the amount of money that's being spent, which is a huge part of this, does deserve credit for bringing a sense of professionalism to where this team is operating at a level where it's on a short list of teams that can win a World Series year in, year out. That doesn't just happen. And It doesn't just happen because you throw money at it. It's a big part of it, but you need people to conduct the business to get you there. And I think it would be silly to overlook that. That being said, past 365 days, like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, it's got to be better than this.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. He's had his ups and downs. I mean, obviously the trade deadline was a win. Like, he did a great job at the trade deadline, getting Duran and Bader, and even Robertson wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible. Like, that was a needed piece to the bullpen considering how bad it was. So, I mean, he's had his ups, but yes, his last offseason last year's offseason was a disaster. This year's, I wouldn't call it a disaster, but it was certainly a letdown considering how things went. I think it's an average. I gave it a C+, you gave it a C-, and I think it's probably right there. I mean, I think we're right in the ballpark of what it was. So there are criticisms worthy of it. And yeah, I mean, look, there's things like this crop up nowadays. Maybe in years past, they were able to sweep under the rug and not have to talk about publicly. But now in the modern day, it gets out a little bit easier, and maybe Dave hasn't handled it well. Being an old school guy. Yeah. Here's the 2-part question that I wanted to ask you, and this is kind of lighthearted. We can wrap it up on this. Fast forward to 11 years from now, 2037. Phillies bring back the 2022 team that went to the World Series and honor them. Is Nick Castellanos part of that celebration, A? And B, what is his legacy in Philadelphia? Will we remember him more for this, or will we remember him more for other things that he did, like hit 5 home runs in the span of 8 at-bats in the playoffs? Like, I mean, like he's had some crazy good moments too. Like, what will we remember from Nick Castellanos?
That's a great question, especially the second one. Yes, I think he'll be there. I mean, there's going to be a lot of turnover here, in the next few years. And I can't imagine Nick Castellanos would not be welcomed back here by the organization. Am I underplaying? Like, I mean, I know the Phillies are not in the market of just like flushing $20 million for no reason. So there's some bad blood here. But like, do I think it's bad blood to the degree that they wouldn't welcome him back in 15 years? I don't think so. And do I think that he's happy with the Phillies? Certainly not. But I would imagine if he can't make it, it might be a logistical thing. But like, I wouldn't think he'd say, "I'm not going back to that place." It was. Well, I think that his family. I don't think. Twitter aside, and I'm sure that they were very frustrated by some of the boos and like the stuff that happened with the fans and maybe the lack of what they perceived to be lack of patience. I would not agree with that assessment. I'm sure that privately they're like, dude, screw these people. Like a lot of athletes probably do privately. Right. But I think overall, like the city embraced the kid, embraced the family. It was a good story. I think there's enough good here that 15 years from now, this is all water under the bridge.
Yeah, you hope. I mean, it does for some guys take a while. I mean,
thanks the owner, like for the money basically in it. You know what I mean? If you're thanking the owner in your exit note, I would say like that's probably a good enough indication to me that there's enough there that probably all right.
How about the legacy part?
The legacy part, I don't know. I don't even know how I view it right now. It's certainly complicated. I would say he was a disappointment, but I do appreciate that he had moments. I just remember when they signed him, and certainly after the 21 that he had in Cincinnati, I just remember being like, this is the guy. Like, he's got this, he plays with, like, his hair's on fire. He's got the thump. He's perfect complement, middle of the order thumper from the right side. That's what they needed because we've been saying for the last 3 seasons, that's what they need. We just thought he was the guy that was going to give it to him. I would say that people aren't going to boo him. And I don't think that people are going to say he was a bum or anything like that. Because as you noted, he did. He worked his butt off. He was there every day. He wanted to play every day. And in this city, I think that goes a little bit further than sometimes it even should.
Right.
But I don't think anybody's going to say like, damn, that was a good Philly. Like what a dude he was. He was my favorite. Like, I don't know. I don't see that either.
Yeah. It's interesting. Sounds like, and I haven't heard who yet, but it sounds like they've already given away his number. Somebody else is. I think if I had to guess, yeah, I'm going to say Aiden Miller. And I don't know the answer to this question. I'm just guessing. My original thought was going to be that it was Justin Crawford. But Crawford, I think, might want to be 13.
One other thing real quick on like the legacy part of this, like we're at a point now where we have guys that, as it relates to the overall organizational picture and its history, like we have all-timers taking the field for this team right now. Like the catcher is an all-time Philly. The first baseman's an all-time Philly. I know that we've been frustrated with him, but like Trey Turner, probably when it's all said and done, will go down as like an all-time Philly in a lot of different statistical categories.
Yeah.
Schwarber, certainly the same thing. Wheeler, Nola, Christopher Sanchez might win a Cy Young. He might be like, there's like 6, 7, 8 guys here right now that are like in the elite level of Phillies players in this team's history. But like we are sour on them in real time because of what they failed to do and what it's looked like in recent Octobers.
Yeah.
So like it's a little bit of a complicated legacy, even with the guys that you feel like it should be a slam dunk.
You're not wrong.
People are kind of going, like they brought back they're probably the best catcher in the history of the franchise. I mean, am I wrong? Like Darren Dalton's great.
So I look at it, Bob. I think of it like this. Like, I mean, that '93 team. It was a 1 year, obviously, lightning in a bottle thing. But there are guys from that team who are considered all-time Phillies, and they never won. Like Darren Dalton was in
the organization for more than a decade. I mean, that was here from 83 to 97. So he's here 14 years, and I don't want to write off what he was, but I think that JT Realmuto, by most objective measures, is
a better catcher, 100%. But like even like guys like like John Kruk, right, considered an all-time Philly. But they didn't win anything.
Yeah.
They didn't win. They only had one good year. Like this group has at least been part of the conversation for 4 years, and this is going to be a 5th year again that they're going to be part of it. Like, I think when you look at it, I think yes, ultimately it'd be better if they won a championship. But even if they don't, it's still going to be, they're still going to be well liked and well remembered going forward, even though they didn't win, because we've done that in this town. We've celebrated the people who came close but didn't win either.
Fair. I guess the Eagles, the early 2000s Eagles, is a good measure of that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good stuff. Anything else?
No, that's it. That's it.
All
I
right.
think we wanted to get this one in because everybody's talking about the Castellanos thing, and so we wanted to make sure that we got our takes on record for perpetuity to live forever in the podcast feed, which you can find anywhere that you get your podcasts, whether it's on Apple Music, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, wherever you get them, or here on YouTube, where everything lives on YouTube. Don't forget, ring the bell, subscribe. That way you'll know every time Bob and I go live here on Fighting Words. If you're listening in the podcast feed, want to find us on YouTube, it's youtube.com/@FightingWords. For Bob Wankel, I'm Anthony Sanfilippo saying thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll talk to you next week, where we hopefully have some updates when the rest of the team, not just pitchers and catchers, arrive at spring training. And we will talk to you then.